Today on The Real Story, the vaccine debate will take center stage this week. Lawmakers holding a public hearing on eliminating the religious exemption. That's after last year's measles outbreak and a rise in unvaccinated children entering school. We hear from both sides of the issue. First up, the Connecticut Freedom Alliance co-founder Brian Festa. And then we talk with State Senator Saud Anwar. He's on the Public Health Committee and he's a doctor. Senator Anwar will give us his take on the details of the bill recently released.
Connecticut can be the Saudi Arabia of wind power.
And a follow-up to a topic The Real Story continues to follow. Big plans for New London's State Pier now revealed. Governor Lamont saying it will bring hundreds of jobs and millions of dollars in revenue. We break down the deal's numbers. It's all today on The Real Story. Hi there, you're watching The Real Story. I'm Jen Bernstein. Well, this week, the vaccination debate will take center stage. Lawmakers considering doing away with the religious exemption for vaccinations. Now, this comes after a measles outbreak last year plagued New York. Connecticut seeing several measles cases itself, and the Connecticut Department of Health released vaccination rates at the beginning of the school year, and it showed 134 schools fall short of federally recognized guidelines. The trend, less children are getting vaccinated, which doctors say puts herd immunity at risk, as well as children with compromised immune systems. But there are vocal parents out there who believe the government would be infringing on their rights if the religious exemption is eliminated. That's the belief of the Connecticut Freedom Alliance. And joining us this morning is its co-founder, Brian Festa. Welcome to The Real Story.
Thank you, Jen. Thanks for having me here.
So you're going to be at this public hearing on Wednesday.
Yes. Not just me, but several hundred, if not, we're hoping 1,000 people will be there on Wednesday for the public hearing.
What's the problem with vaccinations at this point?
It's not so much a problem with vaccinations. So our group, the Connecticut Freedom Alliance, is focused on freedoms and individual rights, parental choice. We are not here to tell anyone, I'm not a doctor, we are not here to tell anyone they should get vaccinated, they shouldn't get vaccinated. It's about giving parents the choice, which is their constitutional right to have their religious freedom over their own bodies, also what goes into their bodies, but their religious freedom to make decisions based on their sincerely held religious beliefs.
So the question here, this religious exemption would be taken out. Medical exemptions are still on the books, and that would not be taken out of the bill. There are a lot of people that say that people are using the religious exemption and it's not for a religious reason.
Well, people say that, but I haven't seen any evidence of that. That's speculation. I've heard legislators say that they're faking the religious exemption. We're actually going to be having a religious freedom conference on Tuesday, the 18th, the day before. It's actually in the same room where the hearing's going to be. It's room 2E of the Legislative Office Building, where we're going to have religious leaders from most of the major world faiths there to say and to explain why their faiths do have sincere religious objections to some, not necessarily all, some vaccinations.
I know that Archbishop Leonard Blair of the Archdiocese of New York had put out a statement.
Of Hartford, I'm sorry.
Of Hartford, yes. Archdiocese of Hartford, along with the Catholic Conference here. And he was, encouraging the use of vaccines. He said in a letter, there's no religious teaching against the use of these vaccines for Catholics. He didn't go as far as to support the repeal of the exemptions. The Pope had done something similar, the Vatican coming out and not saying they were against religious or against vaccinations. So what religion is saying specifically that vaccines aren't okay?
Well, to sort of answer your question broadly, it doesn't really matter whether there is an organized religion that has come out with an official proclamation saying that vaccines are bad or vaccines are good, or that doesn't really matter, because under Connecticut law, you are allowed to exercise your personal religious beliefs, your personal conscience. It's not based on, there's no law that says your beliefs must align with the official teachings of any major organized religion. But again, we are going to have religious leaders here both on Tuesday for the conference and also on Wednesday to testify to explain why there are sincere objections. Just for instance, if I may, Catholics, and I am Catholic, I respectfully disagree with the bishop's position. There are aborted fetal cells that are in vaccines. So the cell lines that are used in some vaccines, such as the MMR and the chickenpox, the varicella vaccination, actually do contain aborted fetal cell DNA because they were derived using cell lines from aborted fetuses. So for people to say that you don't have a sincere objection, if you do have an objection to abortion, that you wouldn't have an objection to vaccines being manufactured from aborted babies, I don't know how people can say that.
The religious exemption has been used even more this year. We've seen a rise in unvaccinated kids entering school. Why is that happening?
Well, I'm actually going to challenge that because the data that was released this past October by the Department of Public Health, it didn't give a sufficient breakdown of exactly which vaccines,
which exemptions were being used.
Which exemptions were being used, and the numbers. The data has been flawed because it's been released actually, I think, 4 times since it was first released in May. There's been 4 different data sets, and they've changed it. They keep moving the needle every time.
Let me re-ask it a different way. Why are we seeing a rise in unvaccinated kids entering school? Why are we seeing that trend?
Again, I don't know that that is a trend. That is what they've been telling us, that there is this rise. But I haven't seen actual numbers to show that there are kids that are, quote unquote, unvaccinated. I just want to say, most of the people that I meet, most of the people even in this movement, are not completely against vaccinations or unvaccinated. They may selectively vaccinate. They may only have an objection to just one vaccine, such as the flu shot or the HPV. So there aren't a lot of people, actually, I think if you would ask most of us, there aren't a lot of us that are completely, or our children are completely unvaccinated. So that's just really a myth that they keep saying there are so many unvaccinated kids in school. Yes, may they be spreading them out, delaying them, or selectively vaccinated, however you want to say it, sure. But to say completely unvaccinated, I think that's just misinformation.
This is such an emotional issue for people on both sides. I want to talk about the level of dialogue and where it's gone, because I know that some lawmakers have been threatened, and that's kind of the level that we've gotten to. Why has it gotten to this point?
I disagree with that as well. I know there was a story last year about Representative Linehan receiving a threat. We actually looked into that with the Capitol Police. They conducted an investigation and found that it did not rise to the level of any criminal activity or a threat. I, on the other hand, did receive what amounts, I believe, to a death threat after my wife and I filed the lawsuit against the Department of Public Health last May. There was someone on a social media platform that said, how do we take care of all these anti-vaxxers? And someone replied, death cures all, the quiet of the grave. So if that's not a threat, I really don't know what is. Whereas the supposed threat that Representative Linehan received, it did not, say anything specifically about violence. So again, that's something that they often use. People on the other side of this issue will use and say we're being threatened to sort of, it's sort of this victim narrative that we're being threatened. And I understand it's emotional. You asked me to answer your question, why is it so emotional? It's emotional because our kids are involved, okay? We're doing this because we believe in our rights to decide how we want to raise and protect our children. We believe that we are protecting our children. We're doing what's in the best interest, and that should be a parent's decision. The government should not be getting in between the doctor-patient relationship or the parent-child relationship.
So in this bill, it does still protect those rights between a doctor and a person or their patient. It says the doctor has the final word on whether they want to use the medical exemption for it. Obviously, they're talking about the religious exemption here. How do we keep the debate, the discourse about it? Because obviously it sounds like you've experienced it a little bit. Lawmakers say they've experienced it. Do you think Wednesday can happen with a healthy debate?
I sure hope so. We want all sides to be heard. At the Connecticut Freedom Alliance, our goal is to promote freedom in all forms: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, all of the freedoms that we hold most dear. So I sincerely hope that both sides get a chance to be heard in a professional and open discourse. I just think that, it is a contentious topic, and it is hard sometimes for people to rein in their emotions. We try our best. Sometimes we do show a little bit of it, but we aim to be respectful and to engage in a dialogue and to share the information that we have, because we really do believe that this is a matter of constitutional freedoms and in illegal infringement on our rights.
Okay. Brian Festa, thank you so much for coming in and talking with us. And we will, of course, be watching Wednesday's public hearing, where I know you and many of your members will also be.
Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you. And still to come today on The Real Story, we get the other side of the debate. State Senator and Dr. Saud Anwar joins us with his take ahead. And then later in the show, we turn our sights onto the shoreline, a final agreement unveiled for the development of New London State Pier. A look at the plans to make it a world-class offshore wind hub. And coming up right after The Real Story, it's Real People with Stan Simpson. On his show today, Cordia Reed, an author who overcame an abusive relationship and eventually found true love. How she's now inspiring other women to turn their pain into purpose. So stick around for that. The Real Story, though, will continue right after a quick break.